And hello once more, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to another edition of the Druids Dozen. My name's John, aka the Rock Druid. I'm a bit of a DJ, do a couple of radio shows. One, the Sunday Rock Show on BCFM radio in Bristol, UK, 93.2 FM. And then there's the Rock Druid Show on astroradio.earth. Yeah, basically these videos are me raiding my record collection, which is, I've been collecting for years. It's got quite substantial, dragging out a dozen albums, sort of at random, waving in front of the camera, and just chatting about them for a bit. So, without further ado, we shall pile straight in with the first of today's offering, and it doesn't get much more metal than this, does it not? There we go, there's the front. There's the back. This is, of course, Fighting the World by the legendary Manowar. I'll pull this out. Yeah, there's the lyric sheet there, with some album credits on it. Get my glasses. I keep forgetting to put my bins on, you know. No, there's no merch sheets or anything like that in there. Now, this album, Manowar, Fighting the World, 1987. What's there to say really about Manowar? They were heavy, they were metal, they didn't like wimps and posers. They were over the top, tongue in cheek, just absolutely storming band. My opinion, their best stuff was probably through from about 84 through to about 1990, that period, but you know, even today they're still bringing out the odd great album. You've got so this track's got one of their better known singles on there, the fantastic Blow Your Speakers. But, you know, Fighting the World, the fantastic drum solo, the Drums of Doom, Black Wind, Fire and Steel, just great stuff. This is from the days when Ross the Boss was still the guitarist, ex-Shaky Street guitarist. And along with Scott Columbus on drums, Dowie DeMayo on bass, and Eric Adams as vocals. It's loud, it's vast, it's in your face, it's about Vikings, it's very, very heavy metal. It's great classic Manowar. Yeah. Can't remember who did the album, the cover artwork. Have a quick look. No, it's on here somewhere, but there are so many credits on this album, I can't dig it out. But anyway, there are some squiggly CWC something or other. But anyway, love the artwork, you know, and basically, it's just Manowar being great. Yeah, our first one today. Fighting the World by Manowar, 1987. If you haven't heard Manowar, it's a good one to start with. Okay, going up on the CD next, and we're having something low-key and local. Now, I know a lot of people may sort of wonder why I kind of wave these odd demo CDs and that in front, but, you know, as someone that grew up in the new wave of British heavy metal, and some of those demos that I got back in the early 80s, and some of those little self-released kind of singles and that, not only are they A, nowadays highly collectible, but B, they're kind of a great kind of memorous and great bands. And this is a good example of one that I don't believe is going to be worth money, but as far as kind of a great band that deserved to be big but never really got off the local scene. This is a good example. This is a little 4-track EP called Time by a band called Melon Farmer, who are out of my hometown in Bristol. And these guys were kind of sort of like pop punk, alternative punk kind of thing. So there's the front cover. There's the band themselves, and that's the inner side of the gatefold. There's the disc, and on the back there's the back cover. Now, Melon Farmer, Bristol band, formed 2004-ish, 4-piece punk outfit, but you know, a bit pop punky maybe, a little bit in the kind of I don't know, the more I see, not the more I see, what I'm on about, All Time Low kind of vibe to them. Maybe a bit of Minor Threat or something like that, but that's the kind of sort of guy wicket these guys are coming off. Saw these guys live quite a few times back in the day. So this EP's from 2006. There's a follow-up as well, which I'll wave in front of you at some point, called Kinetics, which is really good. But this is their first one. Sweet little 4-tracker. Tracks Time, Funky, my favourite card here, Game Over, and then Control. It's loud, it's nasty, it's irrelevant, it's in your face, it's a lot of fun. These guys are a great live band. Saw them live, saw them live a few times. My band's on the same bill. Aidan Stashton's was on the same bill as them a few times. Even had them on the radio show on a couple of occasions. But sadly, long since demised. Some of the guys, I think, have gone on to other projects in around Bristol. Although I can't exactly tell you who's in what, but yeah. Now, obviously, so this is a locally home-produced little CD for selling at gigs. It's not going to be. It wasn't ever produced in vast numbers, so it's going to be quite obscure. Not going to say it's going to be ever going to be valuable or collectible, but for lovers of fine music and want to kind of sample what was happening in a certain city in a certain time, it's stuff like this that's going to become kind of important as historical artifacts anyway. So hence the reason I collect them and show them to you, because you know, if you've got stuff like this in your collection, you might have some real gems that you're kind of forgotten about. So yeah, anyway, Melon Farmer, the Time EP, gonna be like hen's teeth to find, but if you're into a certain kind of pop punk, it's gonna be worth the hunt down. Yeah, I like that one. And talking about ones that I like, actually I like most of the stuff on this week's, if not all. Here we go. There's the front. This is, of course, Astounding Sounds Amazing Music by the fantastic Hawkwind. There's the front. There is the back. And if I pull this out, yeah, Charisma Pink if you're interested. This has got an inner sleeve, and it's like those kind of things you used to find in the back of comics, you know, you called mail off for hand buzzers and learn sheet metal work, become a boxer, master the art of jiu-jitsu. What else we got on here? Voice development, you know, out of develop security, teach yourself art kind of thing. Then on this side, various members of kind of Hawkwind got their own kind of little parodies. You got the Nick Turner, Nick Turner's lingerie collection, Dr. David Brock's atomic pile preparation, Paul Rudolph's Mandy strap-on jock straps, Alan Powell, Alan Powell's Magician Starter Kit, Simon King's bedtime sex manual, the Simon House learn how to play keyboards or any instrument, and then the Robert Calvert voice training, be someone kind of thing. And you know, that's basically the lineup of on this said album. Now this is a bit of a strange one when it comes to Hawkwind albums, as in it kind of falls between two periods. I mean, loads of you know your Hawkwind know that from their inception in 69-70 and their first album through to the War on You to Time album 76, they were full-blown psychedelic, out there in space, probably taken too many mushrooms, space trippy acid rock. Then from the album after this, which was Quark, Strangeness and Charm in 1977, they were almost kind of new wave post-punk before punk had even been invented. Very much a kind of cleaner, kind of more soft rock sound, with Robert Calvert. There's a style that Robert Calvert had developed over his, mainly through his second solo album, Lucky Leaf and the Longships. Came into a Hawkwind sound at that point because Calvert had returned after a couple of years' absence. Actually returns on this album, but it kind of went off on its own kind of little thing. Interesting period, probably one of my favourite Hawkwind periods. But you know, this album marks a transition between the two, as in the fact that Calvert's back, and Calvert is doing his kind of post-apocalyptic weird poetry stuff but it still contains Nick Turner with his kind of psychedelic sax and flute. Now, I'll be honest with you, as much as, you know, I'm a massive fan of Nick Turner, and his solo stuff, Inner City Unit and that, this was the point his relationship with Dave Brock is beginning to break down. Something that's plagued Hawkwind for whatever since. You know, the fallout is still rumbling on to this day. But it's almost as if, kind of like, on this album, Nick Turner's going through the motions. He plays well, but it's kind of, there's no real kind of guts or commitment maybe to his stuff. Well, Robert Calvert said in an interview once that during this album it was almost like Nick Turner was blowing over everything just to get it over and done with. It's a shame because there's some great stuff on this album. The opening two cuts, Reefer Madness and Steppenwolf, absolutely storming cuts, absolute classics. And Steppenwolf particularly is a track that kind of Hawkwind have brought back into their live set over more recent years. The second side contains the single Curb Crawler, very much a Robert Calvert influenced track that's kind of foretelling what's going to be coming over the next few albums. It's quite ethereal and white, almost like indie rock in places. But again, we're talking 20 years before indie rock was has happened, you know. I mean, it's thus far ahead of the curve with Hawkwind. The other tracks on here, The Aubergine, 8 Rand Groon, Konigad, Skyway, Kadu Flyer, they're okay. They're not brilliant Hawkwind tracks. They're not some of the, you know, I wouldn't say this everyone's a classic, because it's not, but it's listenable and it's worthy. So overall, not a bad album. An interesting one. Wouldn't be an album that I recommend that you start with if you're collecting Hawkwind, but one that I recommend that you add to your collection at some point, because I said it's got some interesting moments. Yeah, 1976, this album came out. Astounding Sounds Amazing Music by Hawkwind. Now, on this week, we've got a couple of new releases. And this is the first one. Well, I say new, this one came out about 9 months ago. Very, very early, tail end last year, beginning of next. But I've only just got a copy. Now, this is Animism by the by Sons of Liberty. They're a kind of country rock kind of outfit, based in sort of what, Somerset, Bath area. Members in Bristol and South Wales as well. Very much kind of like southwestern boogie. They're in the kind of heavily at the bands like Skinner and Molly Hatchet and Blackfoot and that. Now I did one of their a couple of episodes ago. I did their one of their earlier EPs, and they went, "Whoops, we knew we forgot to send you an album," and then this arrived this week. So I've been listening to it, and it's pretty good. It's pretty damn fine. So Sons of the, you said what they're like. They're kind of very southern boogie. So there's the front. There's the back. Oh, I love the artwork on that as well, if you can see it. Right. Then on the inner sleeve you've got, well, there's the disc. There's the, so it's not a gatefold, it's just a single card. And there on the back side is the band themselves, looking like they just come out of a Georgia Roadhouse, boys. Yeah. Yeah, great. It's a good album. It is. It's a lot. I think I find with a lot of southern rock is, you know, there's been a few bands like 38 Special have thrown curveballs at times, and Blackfoot have done some sort of MTV favourite flavoured albums. But most of the time with southern rock, you know what you're gonna get. You're going to get good time rock and roll. You're going to get at least one track with an extended guitar solo. You're going to get lots of good time boogie and songs about guns and drinking and just having a good time. This is no exception. 11 cuts of absolute southern rock genius. Highlights, there's Lead Don't Follow. Quite an interesting little tune. Rich Man, Poor Man, Beggar Man, Thief, absolute rocker. Snake Hit Slim, Deep Down Crazy, Into the Great Unknown, It's My Bad. They tracks keep coming at you one after another. They make you want to stick on your Stetson and drive a pickup with a gun rack. This is what southern rock's about. And these guys from England, yeah, great stuff. Like I said, fans of Lynyrd Skynyrd. No matter what side of the pond you're on, get this, it's great. The guys assured me they during lockdown they've been working on the follow-up album as well, and I will wave that in front of you as soon as I get it, probably early next year. But yeah, this year, Sons of Liberty, Animism, go get out on Roulette Media Records. Now, this next one's a bit of a curveball. Here we go. Mike Harding, Bomber's Moon. There's the front. There's the back, or rather it should go like that. And then there's the inside, if you can see it. Big picture of a Lancaster. Now, Mike Harding is probably best known as a comedian. Very funny chappy. Now, bear with me if you know this, but if you're not, this is relevant. Now, most people think of alternative comedy starting very late 70s, early 80s through TV, through like the Comedy Store in London, sort of like promoting alternative stand-ups, like things like Alexi Sale and Arthur Smith. and then leading on to kind of TV shows like not 9 o'clock news, the young ones, etc. However, there was an alternative comedy scene going in Britain for about the 10 years leading up to that point. It was known as the folk comedians, as a kind of colloquial catch-all term, because it was a group of comics, some very, very funny guys that had the same kind. A lot of them had the same kind of ethos as what the alternative comics went, where they would avoid the blatant sexism and racism, and you know, kind of, you know, mocking of minorities, as well. But all these guys shared a kind of origin, the fact that most of them were failed folk singers, or folk singers that kind of found themselves getting more reactions to their little monologues between the songs than they did actually singing the songs. And it seemed like nearly every area of the UK produced one. The Welsh had a guy called Max Boyce. The Scottish had the legendary Billy Connolly. The Birmingham produced Jasper Carrot. Yorkshire brought us a guy called Tony Capstick. Here we are in Bristol, we had Fred Wedlock. And Lancashire gave us Mike Harding. Now, out of all of those, Mike Harding was the one that remained closest to his folky roots. Very, very funny guy. He was kind of got quite popular for a few years on British telly, had his own series and that. But yeah, also did lots of most comics do go on tour. And one of the comics I used to go and see regularly every time he came to Bristol. And what I liked about Mike Harding was, one, his comedy involved long, shaggy dog stories that were just compounds of jokes within jokes within jokes, very, very cleverly constructed. But also, he would break the comedy and sing some songs. Some of them admittedly were comic songs, but a lot of them were very, very good folk tunes that he had written, or adapted from traditional sources or other people. And as a result, he could move you to tears one minute and have you splitting your sides laughing in the arse the next. The guy was a genius. Only met him briefly once to shake his hand, and I told him he was a genius and he went a bit red. But anyway, when did this album come out? 80. It was early to mid 80s. I want to say 82, 83, but I might be wrong. No, it doesn't. Doesn't say. I think 83, 84, something around then. Might even be as late as 85, but somewhere around that period. He decided, you know, he was at the top of his game as a comic. The guy could sell out most venues in Britain within a couple of hours of tickets going on sale. He was all over the telly. And then he decided to return to his folk roots, and he ended up recording quite a few folk albums, and these days he's now presents folk radio shows on various local radio shows up north. But this was his return to his folk roots. Bomber's Moon, it's a kind of concept album about growing up in Lancashire during the 20th century. There's a couple of covers on here. Does Bruce Springsteen's Factory. I don't know what Springsteen album that's off. And there's a guy called a track called January Man, written by a guy called Dave Gawder, retired railwayman turned songwriter. And then Eric Bogle, and the band played Waltzing Matilda, which is all about the Anzac landings and all that kind of stuff. Now, there's a strong anti-war theme running through this. The track Bomber's Moon himself, written by Mike Harding, about his father, who he never knew. His father married his mum on leave from the RAF and then was killed a couple of months later. in a Lancaster bomber over Germany, leaving his mum with a young Mike Harding in the oven. So he never knew his father, and this is the title track on this is about him exploring his father, looking for his father, and you know, a tribute to him. It's about bombers going out to bomb Germany and why do we do it, that kind of thing. Other tracks on here: Small High Window, about working in factories and seeing the windows, or like, you know, outside looking up for the moors. I wish you could be out walking rather than slaving away in a factory. 30 Nights, about being in a rock and roll band going around the country. These Poor Hands, about again working in cotton mills. And then the spine tingling Atkinson Pals. Mike Harding, supported by a brass band, talking about the, I can't go into the whole story, but it's like, yeah, Atkinson Pals, a regiment formed from Atkinson in London, in Lancashire, during the First World War, and basically they were all from the same town, all people that knew themselves, knew each other, workmates, etc. And 1,000 men went over the top at the Battle of the Somme, and less than 150 came home without being killed or injured. Completely wipes out a generation in the town. So powerful stuff, and a powerful song. Now I wondered how many people brought this album at the time expecting a typical E-Bar Gone Up North observational comedy album, and ended up being moved by some rather potent folk singing. Mike Harding's vocals aren't brilliant, but he's got an honest quality to him that makes the delivery spine tingling. I love this album, and I recommend anyone that's into folk, or anyone that just likes a piece of good songwriting, should check this out. Mike Harding, Bomber's Moon. Better get a shufty. Here we go. Next up, another new one. Achtung, Minen by Little Villains. There's the front. There's the back. No booklet or anything in this, just open up the gatefold. And there's a press release paper thing, information on the band, etc. Now, Little Villains, there's a story behind this lot. Start off with a guy called Owen Charles. Originally born in Wales, grew up in Bristol. Was a guitarist in a band known as Airbus, who were a pretty good kind of rock band in Bristol back in the sort of late 80s, early 90s. Kind of heavy indie band. Now, Airbus fell apart, and you know, the roads that the people lead took Mr. Charles over to the US. There he was joined by his brother, who was again a band called Waxy, South Wales, again another kind of indie band. Now, the two Charles brothers one day, completely chance meeting, bump into a guy called Phil Taylor. Yes, Filthy Animal Taylor, the former Motorhead drummer. And basically, well, conversations were led, and they formed a band, the Little Villains. Classic three-piece Motorhead-inspired power trio. Now, I've got to get the album titles right. Now, they recorded an album entitled, he says, having a look, yeah, recorded a load of material, sorry. Now, unfortunately, Filthy Phil Taylor got ill with cancer and died before they could do anything with the recordings they made. They left them with 2 albums worth of material, and Phil Taylor and Phil's family were really quite happy with what he did. So he gave the Charles brothers permission to package and release the album. I put them as 2 albums, Filthy Lies and Tailor Made. Came out 2019 and early this year respectively. Both albums are pretty good. I got them both. They're quite, I'll wave me in front of the camera at some point. They're both kind of very Motorhead. Phil Taylor's on fine form. Since some of his last recordings, and towards the end of the sessions he was really quite ill. He did a sterling job. Now, with Phil died, they wanted to try and take this stuff live. Obviously, with COVID restrictions worldwide, a lot of this idea has been torpedoed. But they decided to bring in that guy there, who we talked about last week. This guy called Chris Felder, aka Topher Ice Cry, ex-member of Bristol comedy metal band Ye Gods, because they were mates going back years ago. So, unable to tour, they decided to record a new album. So over the course of this year, this was written and recorded and has just come out on Spira Records. Now, this is a great sort of like continuation of the Little Villains kind of legacy. Slightly more West Country than some of the other stuff. There's opening cut, there ain't no cider on the rider, and everybody knows how we all worship cider here in the West Country. Just great sort of track, kind of loose, kind of militaristic kind of feel. Tracks like Hawker Hurricane, Shot in the Head, Leopard Dead, Achtung, Minen, Jitter Juice, Feeling Alright, The Bombardier, Doodlebug, Hand Grenade. It bludgeons its riffs, it's brilliant. I mean, old Chris Felden, is a natural choice to replace the fantastic Phil Taylor. He plays like him, got that same kind of animalistic maul around the kit that Phil Taylor had. Yeah, this is just really good. I'll say at the moment on both my radio shows, this is my featured album of the month, playing lots of tracks off this. So if you want to hear what it's like, the details for radio shows are down there on YouTube. They're over there on Facebook. Give them a look, give them a listen. And primarily just for the Little Villains because they're great. Or failing that, go download this album and the previous two as well. Little Villains, Achtung Minen, brand new release, only came out a week or two back, and highly, highly recommended. It's just a great album, great bit of metal, great fun. Okay, moving on, keeping it CD. But a bit of this. There's the front. This is Dio at Donnington live at 1983-1987. With a radio promo thing there. So there's the front. There's the back with the promo reuse, not for resale. Some people get excited about those kind of things. And if I open up the four, there's the four thingy, there's sort of like pictures from the crowd of Dio doing his thing. There's the two discs. Yeah, BBC recordings this is, on Ninja Records, BBC via Ninja Records. Ninja being, of course, Wendy Dio's kind of label, or Dio's label, sorry. Couple of backstage passes, sort of reproductions, 87 and 83 Monsters of Rock. A great booklet here, talking about Dio, because this came out not long after the guy sadly passed away, and yeah, kind of reminiscing about who was it wrote the sleeve notes on here? Dante Boeto, can't remember who he is, but basically reminiscing. Oh yeah, of course, it's one of the Kerrang writers, wasn't he? Reminiscing about Dio's performances at Donnington in those 2 relevant years, and then there's album credits, etc. Then on here, there's the kind of info sheet, press release stuff. Now, so issued as one of the first tribute releases to come out on the death of the late great Ronnie James. This is basically the complete unedited BBC archive recordings of Dio from the 1983 and 1987 Donington sets. And it does what it says on the tin. Now, sadly, because of these are festival recordings, quality is not brilliant. I mean, it's something I found with my recordings done at festivals, is unless you're the headliner that's had a chance to set the sound up and sort of like sound check as you like, a lot of the time you sometimes get a sound check the day before. A lot of times at festivals you do not get a sound check, you get a kind of running line check as you go on, and you know, so the mixing, especially on the 83 when they were further down the bill than they were on 87, is not brilliant. You know, even kind of the BBC giving their kind of, they don't normally do quite a good job of giving live sound a twerk, haven't really managed to kind of, it's not a killer, put it this way. It's not as bad as the Diamond Head live at Milton Keynes and Donington one that he brought out a couple of years ago, but overall it's not perfect. But do you want it to be perfect? Because this is celebrating Dio on 2 occasions, going on in front of a festival crowd and making the afternoon his own. 83 is the 83 set is obviously mainly drawn from the Holy Diver album, with a smattering of Rainbow and Sabbath tracks on here. You got sort of like Children of the Sea, Shot Through the Heart, Stand Up and Shout, Holy Diver, Rainbow in the Dark, Man on the Silver Mountain, Stargazer, Heaven and Hell, etc. Then 87 is more of a kind of, there's more Dio in there than there is kind of other stuff. Although, so you've got stuff like Rock and Roll Children, Last in Line, Holy Diver, All the Fools Sailed Away, Rainbow in the Dark. But then you've also got things like Neon Nights, Long Live Rock and Roll, Children of the Sea, Heaven and Hell, Man on the Silver Mountain. Yeah, that kind of stuff. Just very, very good, enjoyable. Like I say, the recording quality, mate, I'll give it a 9 out of 10 rather than the perfect. But, you know, as a document of the great late Ronnie James doing his stuff, it deserves to be heard. So yeah, Dio at Donington UK live 83-87, pretty good. Yeah, I know I like it because it's like Dio, and but like, this is the hand that once shook hands with Ronnie James Dio. Okay, he was leaning over the stage at the NEC and I'm going like that and he's going like that, but hey, we touched skin, man. I haven't washed it since. Yeah. Okay, moving on. There we go. How about this one? This is Skull Wars by the Pirates. There's the front, and I love the artwork on that. Joe Patango, whoever he happens to be. But there's the front. There's the back. Just the inner sleeve. No, nothing on the. Nothing on the. Oh, yeah, actually, there's. I know that some people like these kind of things, but it's got a. There we are, a unique disc label on one side. There we go. Now, the Pirates, one of the seminal British rock and roll bands. Yes, it's the same Pirates that used to back up the legendary Johnny Kidd. Johnny Kidd and the Pirates, those of you that know, kind of one of Britain's early rock and rollers. Sadly, Johnny Kidd died back in the 60s, and the rest of them the rest of the Pirates carried on, although disappearing into the underground circuit, and became one of the forerunners of the kind of what we know in the UK as the pub rock scene. Now, fast forward about 10 years since the death of Johnny Kidd, Pirates are still going. Still regulars at places like the Fulham Greyhound in London and the Inn on the Green up in Manchester and that kind of thing. All the pub rock stomping grounds. The Mardyke in Bristol there. And then all of a sudden punk comes along. A lot of the punk movement had a lot of respect for the kind of pub rockers. Bands like Dr. Feelgood, the Pirates, Kilburn and the High Roads, etc. And maybe because kind of pub rock and punk rock kind of both shared the same ethos of being no nonsense, straight down the line rock and roll. And anyway, all of a sudden the Pirates, circa 1976, 77, suddenly found themselves back in vogue, and Warner Brothers signed them up. And they produced about 2, 3, maybe 4 albums from about 77 through to the early 80s of some really, really good pub rocking, rock and roll kind of proto-punk kind of stuff. And I do use the word proto-punk because it's a very kind of punk vibe to it without actually being full-on nihilism. You got this album's the 1978 one. The classic with the classic lineup of Mick Green on guitar, Johnny Spence on bass, and Frank Farley on drums. It's just a great rock and roller. A mixture of there's 4 live tracks on here. Johnny Be Good, Talking About You, I'm in Love Again, and Honey Hush, along with kinds of originals, Long Journey Home, Dr. Feelgood, their tribute to the Canvey Island Boys, All in It Together, Voodoo, Fort of the Bar, and Diggy My Versace, Shake Hands with the Devil. Yeah. Storming stuff. It's straight down the line. It's no nonsense. It's immaculately well played. It's just great rock and roll. Yeah. Sadly, I got lucky enough to see the Pirates not long before the death of Mick Green, and when they eventually called it quits. Don't think it was the same lineup as this, but hellishly entertaining, and just it's really good. I said, if you like the Feel Goods, if you like Kilburn and the High Roads, and you haven't come across the Pirates, why not go get? They're great. Nothing more to say really, apart from "Ooh Ah" by the Pirates. Okay, next up, something a little bit interesting. I think it's all interesting, you know what I mean. Here we have this one. This is the Shop Tapes by Jason Welt. There's the front. There's the back. Here's the card. sleeve notes on the inside of the gatefold there. There's the disc if you're interested. Now, Jason Welt, aka real name Jason Cooper, is the front man for Californian punkers Welt, his own band. Band that's had a quite a fluid lineup over the years, although he's been the ever-present type thing. And but this is a solo acoustic album that he brought out in 2009. Well, they're kind of typical Californian punk, bordering on hardcore. If you know your early AFIs, you know your Converges, that's roughly where they're coming from. But he brought this out, and here he's heading very much into Bruce Springsteen territory. Imagine acoustic, some of Springsteen's acoustic-y stuff. That's where this guy's coming from. Very blue collar rock, kind of sort of down home stuff. 7-track album, good stuff. Now, when he brought this album out, his record label was get the name of the label, but they were based in Bristol. Bring Your Own, BYO, Bring Your Own. I think that's what they were called. But anyway, they were run by a couple of Bristol bands, and they were dealing with his UK distribution. And basically, the guy had come over to do some publicity, and the long shot, upshot was, he came on my radio show. And we had a great evening, playing through this album, chatting away, chewing the fat. The guy is such a nice, kind of friendly bloke, very forthright in his beliefs. And very kind of, you know, no bullshit about the guy, but such a nice geezer with it, you know. Very nice human. Yeah, and we just played through this album, and this album's become a bit of a favourite of mine ever since. Favourite cut on here is probably either Novocaine or Working Man, although it's all pretty damn good. Like I said, do you imagine the kind of punky Bruce Springsteen? Maybe a bit of a kind of an American Billy Bragg, but without the kind of blatant politicking. That's roughly where he's coming from. Overall, just very good stuff. Don't know if this is still available. Or Cyber City Records, this one. Sorry, or Cider City, yeah, forgot about that. Being the American label. But anyway, yeah. Don't know if it's still available, but if you do want to check it down, you like kind of, you want to hear what Bruce Springsteen would have sounded like after sniffing a load of glue and listening to too much Billy Bragg. This is what it sounds like. Yeah, great album. Shop Tapes, Jason Welt. Next up, we have a bit of Yes. Actually, next up I'm having a slurp of liquid. Here we go. Yes, Big Generator from 1987. There's the front. There's the back. For some reason, the vinyl's come out of the sleeve. Yeah, inner sleeve, lyrics and credits. Now, Big Generator, the second of Yes's kind of 80s MTV era. Some people will call it Sellout, other people will call it Embracing a New Direction. Every way you want to call it, the second of their 80s albums. Although Drama's technically 1980s, that's kind of a hangover from the prog rock days. But this is a follow-up to the classic 90125. Trevor Rabin on guitar. Try to remember the exact lineup on this. John Anderson vocals, Tony Kay keyboards, Trevor Rabin guitar, Chris Squire and Alan White. Yeah, that's the kind of lineup for this album. It's commercial. It's it basically takes over where 90125 leaves off, but it's almost kind of like they're trying to regain some of the kind of, because 90125 is a very poppy album, and it's almost like they were trying to regain some of the kind of, yes, rocky kind of stuff, but keep the kind of commercialism. Whether it works or not, I don't know. There's a couple of tracks in here I really like. The title track, for example, Big Generator, Shoot High Aim Low is really good, and Holy Lamb, Song for Harmonic Convergence. It's typical John Anderson, away with the fairies, kind of trying to be esoteric kind of stuff. And yet, for those of you that have watched this will know that I'm not a huge John Anderson fan. Nothing against the guy personally, just don't like his vocals and think his lyrics are very, very too pompous for his own good. But that's just me. Feel free to disagree. Slag me off in the comments if you do. But you know, it's a free world. We can like what we like. But you know, so I don't know. But there are other tracks on here. Rhythm of Love, Almost Like Love, Love Will Find a Way, I'm Running. That are almost kind of like outtakes from 90125. They're not. They don't really bring much to the Yes Party. As a result, you've got an album that's patchy, it's bitty, and it kind of falls between two stools, because it's not kind of up its own backside enough to be classic Yes, but it's not poppy enough to be 90125 era Yes. Yeah, I like it in places. I wouldn't recommend that you start your Yes collection with this one. Although if you're going to be a completionist, it's going to have to turn up at some point. But yeah, it's, in my opinion, it's a flawed album. I say it's got some points on here I really like, but a lot of it leaves me cold. Yeah, Big Generator by Yes from 1987. Okay, last CD. Before we finish up with our final vinyl. And there's the front. Actually, this is in a box sleeve there. There's the back. This is, of course, the amazing Kamikaze Syndrome by Slade from 1983. Again, there's the front. There's the back. Pop this open. Typical Slade reissue with all the album covers there. How many of these have you got? I think the answer for me is all of them. There's the disc, which is funny enough the centre spinner of the vinyl. It all kind of reworks. And a great booklet in here. Going through, talking about the story of the album, okay, because this is a CD reissue. Artwork, photographs, the singles and the original US pressing of this album, which had a different title, different track listing as well, if I remember rightly. Photographs and credits, etc. Now I do own this on the original vinyl, but I got this because like most of these reissues, it's the bonus tracks. There's 6 bonus cuts on this. 12. This is the album that's got the 2 big hits off it, My Oh My, Run Away. The 2 tracks that broke them in the States, and this was the album that kind of eventually got Slade the US fame they deserved. So the bonus cuts, which is the main reason I bought this CD for, Keep Your Hands Off My Power Supply, which was a title track of an album in the States, B-side in the UK, and 2 other B-sides, the fantastic 2-track stereo, 1-track Mind, and Don't Tame the Hurricane. All good stuff. then you've got the main album. So you've already mentioned the 2 big tracks, and also there's the other one, the Last Waltz, Sailor V, which was a lesser hit single over this side, and there's another one there, quasi-Celtic, lighter waving, kind of stuff. However, get away from that. This is a great album. I mean, you got tracks like Slam the Hammer Down, In the Doghouse, Cocky Rocky Boys were all okay, and then the classic, which is in my opinion still one of Slade's finest ever songs, Ready to Explode. It's 8.5 minutes of rock opera with various characters being sung by Noddy Alder and Jim Lee in turn. Story about a young lad that kind of wants to be a racing driver, and he buys a 750 motorbike and eventually becomes a racing driver and goes into a race and is ready to explode. It's just a cracking track. You know, it's almost like that is Slade's answer to Bohemian Rhapsody, and in my opinion it's as good a cut as Bohemian Rhapsody ever was. And I like Queen, don't get me wrong. Yeah, makes this album worth collecting for just that one song. The rest of it's pretty good, but Ready to Explode is the reason you should buy this album. Yeah, 1983. As I said, this is a reissue from about 10 years ago, but yeah. If you want to try collecting some of the later, more serious Slade, as opposed to kind of glammy Slade, I'm not knocking the glammy Slade, I've got all the albums, but this is the one to start with, I reckon. Good stuff. The Amazing Kamikaze Syndrome by Slade from 1983 leads us on to the final vinyl for this week. And again, I apologise again, this is a battered sleeve. I don't know if this is an original or a repress or whatever. I guess this is the copy I've had for years. Yeah. Who's Next by The Who. There's the front, with them walking away from having urinated on a large piece of concrete on a pebbly beach somewhere. There's the back. Always wondered me about that picture. I think a bit damaged. John Entwistle looks really pissed off there. I don't know why, but something's been biting his balls. But yeah, The Who's greatest album, I don't know. Your Jury's still out. It's one of my favourites, but you know, I like The Who full stop. But this is an album that I keep coming back to because when you look at the track listing, the cliche I know when I say it, but not a weak track in the house. Kicks off Barbara O'Reilly, a fantastic Bargain, which I think is one of The Who's most underrated songs. Love Ain't for Keeping, My Wife, Song Is Over, Flip It Over, Getting in Tune, Going Mobile, and then the double whammy of Behind Blue Eyes, leading into the full 8.5 minute version of Won't Get Fooled Again. Storming record. So many high points on here, it's unreal. The violin solo at the end of Barbara O'Reilly, Pete Townsend chiming riff at the beginning of Bargain, the pounding, Entwistle's pounding bass on Song Is Over, the plaintive lyrics of Behind Blue Eyes, the kind of angry Pete Townsend power chording on We Won't Get Fooled Again. Just a classic, just a classic. Song after song after song jumps out of the speakers. Yeah, nothing more to say really. If you haven't heard this album, do yourself a favour and go check it out. You stream it or download it or purchase it, because it's one of the classic. Along with albums like Zepp 4 and Deep Purple's in Rock and that kind of Judas Priest British Steel, one of the ultimate British rock albums of all time. Yeah. Who's Next by The Who from 1970, 71. 70 or 71? He says, having a quick look. Do you know? It doesn't actually say. But I think it's 71. But anyway, Who's Next by The Who. Classic seminal album. Should be in everybody's collection. So that's it for this week. Hope you enjoyed. want to give a quick thumbs up to a guy called Chris, runs a cut called the Vinyl Orchard. Does similar kind of things to this, that I'm kind of really loving his stuff. He doesn't waffle on as much as me, but he talked about some great music as well. So salute to Chris if you're watching this, mate. I love your channel. But anyway, that's it for this week. I'll be back next with another dozen. Links to the radio shows are down there on YouTube, over there on Facebook. Give them a listen if you like. And again, if you want to agree with me, disagree with me, pass comments, reminisce, feel free to do so. The comments are down there. Loves you all, and until next week, peeps. Bye.